They said no to that stuff, and she got banished for it. But she had her pride staying with her at that time. So a search began. All the beautiful young girls in the empire were brought to be eligible to be the new queen. Esther was poor and a Jewish orphan. Her uncle Mordecai had become her adopted father, had power, raised her well. And so she was brought in and she was chosen because she was beautiful. The Bible says she was very handsome and well made, which means she was good looking. And so she was chosen, named to be the new queen. But also she had grace. She had an ability to carry themselves. I always appreciate people who can carry themselves well. It says a whole lot to me more than maybe how they look. Can you carry yourself well like that? So the king genuinely loved her and would do anything for her. But he had not learned that his new queen was of this particular group that had been exiled into their country, the Jews. So the king's top assistant, an evil egomaniac named Haman, plotted to murder every Jewish man, woman, and child in all of Persia because Esther's uncle Mordecai, I like these, by the way, I minored in history, didn't do anything with it, I just minored it. I was taking something, I like history, okay? So Uncle Mordecai wouldn't bow down to this leader by the name of Haman. He wouldn't bow down to this Haman. And so this guy decided he was going to kill all the Jews in land. So this power-mad leader manipulated the king to make a royal decree to have all the Jews annihilated. At stake were the lives of thousands and thousands of God's people. God's people were in distress. There was a day set for them all to die. They lived under the threat of death. Now, all this is memorialized in a Hebrew festival today called the Festival of Purim, Purim. And what it is a two-day festival to recognize God's protection of them in this land of the Persians and release from Persia. Outstanding. Do you know even the Jews today, there's this pastry that they make during this time. It's triangular because that was the shape of Haman's hat that he wore. And it's remembering him. Don't you love this stuff? Yeah, you do. And inside this pastry are some real bitter things. It's real bitter. And the Hebrews nosh some hamantashin. That's what they call it. They bite on this pastry. It's real bitter inside. Guess what they were remembering? The bitterness of their bondage under these exiled situations. That's amazing. Still going on. So, Uncle Mordecai, who raised Esther like a daughter, overheard a plan to eliminate the Jewish people. Went to Esther for help. Esther was faced with a decision. If she went to the king to plead for mercy, she faced death for entering his court without his summons. The king had to summon you first. And if she pleaded for mercy, she faced certain death. Also, she would have to reveal her Jewish identity, ensuring her death if the planned genocide wasn't stopped. If she chose to be silent, her cousin and all the Jews in Persia would die. So, potential self-sacrifice or saving her entire people. Mordecai recognized the gravity of her decision and spoke to her with wisdom. He said, don't think for a moment that because you're in the palace, you will escape when all the other Jews are killed. If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will come from some other source, but you and your relatives would die. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for such a time as this? Esther chose to risk it all. She pleaded for mercy on behalf of her people, and the king complied. But what if the outcome were different? What if the king had executed Esther and the Jews? There was no guarantee her life would be spared or her efforts fruitful. Esther weighed the heavy cost and deemed the risks necessary. She knew that in her heart God had called her, and she took action. She told Mordecai to have her people begin fasting on her behalf. Esther knew that if she was going to fulfill her divine appointment, she couldn't do it relying on her own resources or clever schemes. Through prayer and fasting, She relied upon God's thoughts to be her thoughts, for God's wisdom and power through the power of her nation. This has to go down as one of the most incredible, pivotal points in the history of this nation. Mordecai says, if you do nothing, don't think you're going to escape death. You'll be found out and you will die.